Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so since this is a work session, there's no public comment during this meeting. And I don't have any additional announcements at this time. I have reports here. Did you want to, I saw that there was a question posed about an activity that the district had hosted before. Did you want to ask
Yes.
about that?
Yes, I would actually. Someone asked if we are once again gonna do sort of that Saturday market that we did in previous summer, I believe. And I don't know who coordinated that or if that is something that's still up for discussion in terms of something that we might implement.
So we did that not last spring, but the spring before. And Melinda Fitzhenry, our food service manager, is the one that coordinated that. It's a lot of work.
Sure.
And so, I can approach her, but she would really need to have some partnership from the city or the community progress team or something to secure vendors. And, obviously we're more than happy to make the high school parking lot space available, but it can't be just Melinda trying to arrange all of that.
Okay, so if she can get partnership and decides to lead the charge, we'd be okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I see her tomorrow, so I can approach the subject with her and go from there.
Okay, awesome. That's really the only thing that
Yeah.
I was gonna bring up. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so next on your agenda, we have some administrator reports. And so the first one is a review of English language learner documents, and that'll be Dr. Helms. So I will find the.
I don't know if any of you guys were at the Golden Fawn, but Mr. Helms was at Tux and looked for it.
You probably should get best dressed. I think you did, right?
Totally.
Her dress to the next meeting, so if you want to wear your.
I'll get the tux back out again. Always looking for an excuse.
Problems right around the corner. If not, maybe that, Diego might follow it. We're gonna get.
So a couple of slides. This is an annual report that's required to be presented to school boards. Even though it is dated June of 2023, it always lags data by a year or two. So this data is old by a few years, but that's just the nature of how they collect the data and how long it takes to analyze it and then put it back before everybody. But the general idea here is a statewide report of English language learners in the state of Oregon. And we can chat a little bit about either parallels that we see with state data and Jervis data, or data that we see that may not align all that well. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. This particular slide out of the report just kind of shows the percentage of all students who are current English learners in the state of Oregon. And so, you can obviously see that the line holds relatively steady around that 10% mark for the state. So if you were to sample any random district, you would expect to see about 10% of that district is English language learners. In the Jervis School District, we hover around 300 out of 850. So we are well over that 10% mark. So that obviously tells you there are plenty of districts out there that will have just a fraction of ELs, if any. Comparison of percentage of those that are current ELs versus those that are former ELs. And so this is obviously a pretty healthy curve that you would expect to see, that when they enter into their primary grades in the peach color, this is when they are typically English language learners. And then as they progress through their grades, more and more of them are exiting out. And so the ratio shifts to where more of them towards the end of their years became former English learners as opposed to current English learners. As Raul has presented before, as I have presented before, up until about last year, this was not our trend, that we would see some sort of drop here, but then at a certain point, right around middle school, it just kind of leveled. And we didn't see any of this right here, whereas they continue to progress, more and more continue to exit. We saw middle school, and then it just kind of flatlines. Last year, we did see some trending data that showed that we're hoping that changes in Jervis. We definitely are seeing a drop here in the elementary range, quicker than what I think the state shows as their averages. ELPA scores for this year have not come back in yet, but I'll tell you, like myself and the ELD teachers, we're very optimistic. Like we're really expecting, and I'm going to present next Thursday about the ELD department and stuff like that. So next Tuesday. I'll be here Thursday if you want to be there.
Thursday.
But I'll present next week, the regular board meeting about ELPA testing and all those kind of things. But just as we saw a lot of positive growth last year, I think that we carried through on that really well again this year. So we're really excited. Number of current English learners who are recent arrivals to Oregon. This was kind of an interesting, this doesn't give percentages or ratios, but just kind of gives a total number over the course of the years. Jervis by raw number is nowhere near the Salem Kaisers and the Portland Publics and, you know, the Beavertons and those districts that have recent arrivals or newcomer students. But I believe it was last year or the year before that by percentage of the total student body, we were a top 5 district in the state in terms of the number of recent arrivals that have come to our district. So by raw number, it's not a lot comparison, but if you look at a ratio to our total student body, we actually are top 5 district in the state that receives newcomer students on a regular basis. Number of current English learners with interrupted formal education. And this is an interesting slide because it gives some context about why English language development as kind of an academic discipline within our system can be so difficult at times. That interrupted formal or limited interrupted formal education essentially means that at some point along their journey, they stopped attending school for a notable portion of time. Not that they stopped for 2 weeks, but they were sick, but they were absent from school for a semester or an entire year. That means that they had interrupted formal education. And what it's saying in the state of Oregon is that up to about 61% of those ELs in the high school had some degree of interrupted education as an EL, 27% in middle school, 11% in the elementary school. What that kind of tells us is that when we as a district receive English language learners that are enrolling in our district for the first time as middle schoolers or high schoolers, that we are up against a relatively large challenge because just by objective numbers, it is highly likely that that student has missed a significant portion of their schooling before they've even arrived in Jervis. Which kind of just lends to that real imperative nature that we need these ELs to join our system as kindergartners or first graders. And that is when they are most ripe to be able to have a productive English language acquisition journey and be able to promote out of being ELs by the time they get further on into their junior, senior years and things like that. It just becomes all that much more difficult because of their circumstances, generally speaking.
So like often when there's that interruption, sometimes that often has to do with the family going back to like Mexico for a semester.
Yeah.
Or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wonder how much we take that into account or what we do to follow that when we're notified of that as a school.
Sure. And I know Julie is very intimately involved in that process because we are doing our best and the principals and office managers and everybody are doing their best to try and get the notice out that if it's possible to align those trips with breaks, so they're not necessarily missing school, to try it. And if it's possible that we send work with them, if there's a capacity for them to do work while they're not in district, while they're international or places like that. But, you know, as expected, like that can be very difficult for a lot of families, and some of them just sometimes there's just a lack of appreciation for what interrupted school actually means to somebody at such a formative time in their life. missing a semester worth of school, is significant. Yeah. Percentage of current, former, and never ELs. Never ELs are students that have never been identified as an English language learner, so it doesn't mean they've never learned English. It means they've never been an EL in any capacity. So percentage of current, former, and never English language learners receiving free or reduced price meals. So what this is telling us, which is pretty apropos for our district, is that in the state of Oregon and in Jervis School District, that if you are an English language learner, it is much more likely that you are coming from a home of poverty than for those students that are not English learners at all. And that in and of itself is just an objective statement, but it also carries with it a number of subjective obstacles at times for a number of those families in terms of consistent schooling and being able to access education beyond school hours at home and on weekends, and all of those different kind of things that help that K-12 journey in a productive path, which is just another obstacle that a lot of our ELs just have to navigate. Percentage of current English learners receiving special education and support services. So this is our graph of those that are dual identified. So those students that are identified as both English language learners and those that have an individual education placement plan. Somewhere around on average, that 20% mark. Jervis is going to be a little bit higher than that when you look at our English language learners and those that also have an IEP. We are hovering somewhere around 17 to 18% of our total student body on IEPs. And then if you have about 40% of our students that are active ELs at that time, just the intersection of those two alone is going to put our percentage of dual identified above that 20.3 mark. And then so when you start to put all of these pieces together, that your average EL is likely to come from a home of poverty. Your average EL is likely to have some form of interrupted education. Your average EL is going to be at least in some sort of consideration, if not formally identified, for a special education services. And we do our very best to be very strategic in how we approach this, because we definitely do not want to identify an English language learner as having a disability because it's a language barrier and not a cognitive barrier. But truth be told, in the state of Oregon and nationally, the assessment systems that are available for special education educators and education psychologists and those that tend to identify those who are eligible for SPED services and those who are not, there is no real identified mechanism with a high degree of fidelity that is able to parse apart language barrier versus cognitive barrier, which is why you see an over-identification of ELs in almost every district that has them, which is a pretty significant challenge, because it's not a correct thing to identify somebody with needing special education services if they don't actually need it, but it's a product in some respects of just the tools we have available to us to identify.
So what tools? So at this point in time, we don't have those tools. What tools would you need in order to identify?
It's a good question. And actually, on Tuesday, I could show you a tool that Raul actually created that we use in district, which is pretty incredible. And it's a scaled tool with about 5 different categories that says, is English the preferred language at home or not? Is there interrupted education or not? Has the child been in the United States for 2 years or less? And you start doing a bunch of yeses and nos, and it creates a score, a numeric score. And if the score is 15 or lower, then it is almost entirely likely that the child's obstacles are just language related. We don't have enough data on that child to be able to know one way from the other, because they don't speak English well enough for us to be able to parse it apart. But if the score's high enough, then it's like, okay, English is enough of their life, their home life, their vocabulary, that we should be able to parse it apart. So I'd be happy to show that on Tuesday. It's actually pretty savvy. One of many reasons that Raul's a gem. But that would give a good indication of like kind of what is needed. But again, everybody is so incredibly unique, and special education disabilities is such a unique thing to a unique individual, and how you learn language is so unique that it's really hard to take a out of the box assessment and put it in front of somebody and really kind of parse apart, like, is this a language thing or a cognitive thing? And it's tricky, and that's why over identification is a genuine problem in a lot of districts.
Creighton, does the state take data on tag identification for our EL kids?
They do, and actually I didn't
Is there-
include that.
is-
It's in the report, so
Okay.
I can jump on that.
Yeah.
I can just put that in on Tuesday as well. It's in the report as well as ELs and tag data. Yeah. And this may be the last one, I believe, percentage of current, former, and never English learners that regularly attending school. So again, it just kind of drives home that point that if you are a never English learner, or if you're a former English learner, 2 bars on the right-hand side, in all cases higher than those that are current English language learners. So it's just, again, it's an objective. Each one of these is just a snapshot of data in time, but it kind of paints a picture that if you are an English language learner in the state of Oregon, there are a number of obstacles you have to navigate just to have an equitable playing field with students that might fall into this particular category over here. And I would say, and this is not, I think our ELD teachers are doing a terrific job. I think the work that we're doing is absolutely in the right direction. I think the state of Oregon is not particularly applauded for the work that they do with their English language learners. I would say pretty confidently that the work that we're doing in Jervis over the last 2 years is above state level performance in terms of efforts and initiatives and just overall programmatic changes to try to support our ELs. Questions for me on this? Yeah.
Yeah, that was really helpful.
Yeah.
I can say as a former, never English learner, had dyslexia and was about 6. So, it is important to catch all of our kids with that, you know, so I applaud your, work.
Well, and I'll spend a little bit more time on Tuesday on it, but I genuinely think, I mean, if this was a soapbox, the 2 things that I would really emphasize more than anything else is belongingness and an emphasis on productive language at an early age. So if an EL joins a system and they have a sense of belonging, they feel like people care about them, they feel like they can connect with their peers and their teachers, and that as early as possible, we are getting them to speak right as frequently as possible. I genuinely believe those are the 2 variables above anything else that make a difference. And I think that's where school systems across the board genuinely fail, is the sense of belongingness for those that are othered and focusing much more on receptive language than productive for English language learners.
I do feel that smaller school, atmosphere,
Yeah.
you know, is really helpful too for
Yeah.
that.
Which is why I'm really excited next Tuesday to tell you about summer school.
Tuesday, do we have a meeting Tuesday?
Or Thursday.
I mean, Tuesday, it's the last meeting, so I'm just unaware.
We moved it to Tuesday?
Yeah, because we have to, I'm out of town on Thursday and we have to plug in Wednesday.
I'll see everybody Friday.
I was like, I keep hearing Tuesday. I know, I was thinking the same thing, but.
So, the 16th.
Listen, do you want to sit here to control and then if they,
Oh, you can say, I'm just.
I should use this, or whatever,
Yeah,
whatever
okay.
you want to use.
You're good.
Hi.
Yeah, let's go. So just doing the equity team presentation tonight. And so just kind of recap really quick. So a lot of it is cultivating equity, diversity, and inclusive practices in the district. And recently we hired some new teachers and just kind of talking with them about Jervis. And our students, they're beautiful and brave and creative and kind. They really struggle academically. But I tell them, but that's like the perfect complement. They're really good kids who need like some really amazing teachers in their lives. And so I think as a result, Jervis attracts some pretty amazing people. And so when I look at the equity team, this is a remarkable group. The dynamics in this group are pretty awesome. We're pretty divergent in our perspectives and lived experiences. But the meetings that we have each month, I feel like are so genuine. In fact, this last week, we spent 45 minutes talking about newcomers and the intake process. Just, how hard it is when a newcomer comes in and how little we know about them as we're starting to place them into schedules and we're trying to serve these kids when we really wish we knew so much more about them. And so I just really appreciate and feel blessed to work with just an amazing group of people on the equity team. So the goals that we've been working on, one is implementing, facilitating the use of the equity lens, in providing some cultural education for our staff, and then getting feedback, continuing feedback from families. And so we've shared with you the equity lens, and I think it's just questions that are really important for us to ask, because I think inherently none of us intend to be biased, none of us intend to be exclusive, but just we kind of look through things from a very narrow lens. And so I think that the equity lens is just to take a step back and realize, okay, so whose voices aren't at the table, right? Who are we unintentionally excluded in these decisions, right? Who's being underserved, who's being privileged? And so I think it's really powerful. What we've committed as a equity team then is to, at each of their buildings, to facilitate the use of this lens in one of our leadership teams. And so we're going to be tomorrow doing this with our leadership committee and our activities committee at the elementary school. The 8th grade team and student leadership will be doing it at the middle school. And then we've got attendance and athletics and 9th grade on track at the high school. And so the real hope is that we'll have a committee member sitting in that group, not driving the meeting, but just facilitating the use of the lens to make sure that we're making better decisions, more inclusive decisions. And so that's going to be happening here over the next few weeks, and really excited to see how that goes. We've used the lens as a committee, and for us, it was really insightful. So I think now as a staff, it's one thing to hand out the lens, to stick it on a wall, which I think is what most staff have done, but to then start actually using it. And I think they're gonna have these kind of aha moments, like, oh, like I totally had missed that perspective. Another one was creating videos. And so we've committed to do 4 different videos and share these out with staff. The questions that we're asking, and this is Raul Gomez is doing the videos, and they've been really powerful. So how did your family come to Jervis? What makes you not want to come to school? What are some of your successes and struggles? Do you feel seen in school? And what do you wish staff knew about your family? And I'll just share highlights from 2 of the videos. Martha's awesome. Just an absolute delight. So personable. But she shares a lot about her Russian Old Believer culture, her family's story in coming to Jervis. It really is just a really touching video. One part that really stood out to me from this one is you can tell that she struggled with this like sense of academic self-confidence, but that from being homeschooled to now being at Jervis Elementary School, that she's gained some of that academic self-confidence. So she had said, something I feel really proud of is in math class, I'm getting a lot better at math. Back then, when I was homeschooled, before I came to this school, Jervis Elementary, I wasn't that good at math. So I think I'm really good at math now. But just it was really cool, kind of her talking about her family experience, her personal experience. But then there's other parts of these videos that are really raw. This next one, Adrian, when this video was made, he'd only been in school for a few weeks in Jervis, a recent newcomer from Venezuela. And when you go through his video, parts of it are really hard to listen to. He describes, in this school, hardly anyone greets me. It's like I'm invisible because nobody sees me. The kids just run around and then they get talked to, and that makes me feel bad because nobody greets me, and I'm new here and I've been here just a few days and I'm hanging in there, but I still like it. And so as you listen to things like this, again, super awesome, sweet kid. But I think it's really important for us to see these different perspectives, to hear their different stories, their family experiences, their home situations. I think as staff, it helps us be a lot more empathetic and to maybe like give us cause to pause. I think sometimes we have to make such quick decisions and working with so many kids. Maybe just pause and try to understand a little bit better where they're coming from, you know? And so as we share these with staff, we've gotten really positive feedback because they're conversations with kids that you normally don't get to have, you know, when there's 30 other kids in the room. So we've enjoyed doing this project. Another one is getting feedback from families, and this is really hard. Survey fatigue is a deal, or just apathy, like no one's going to look at it anyway, or I don't want to take the 5 minutes that it takes to provide any feedback. So it's really hard to get feedback. So on this one, we didn't want just to get the most vocal feedback. So we did a random selection of 50 families across section of our student population. So we wanted to make sure that we got different grade levels, newcomers and English learners, and those who've been identified with an individual education plan from different home languages. And so that 50, we're hoping kind of is a good snapshot for the pulse in the district. And the questions we asked, we wanted to keep it really simple and open-ended. So what can our schools do to better academically support and challenge our students? What can our schools do to help students feel more safe? And what can our schools do to better support our students' mental health and social well-being? And then finally, what can our schools do to better communicate and connect with families? And just like our kids, some families come back with very short, like not even complete sentences responses, and then I'll just really let you have it, you know? And so I'll just share just a couple of things here. So this one here. For better academic support, staff should really work toward avoiding favoritism as well as avoiding judgment. Trying to meet each student where they're at will help them feel truly supported and acknowledged as a person. Another parent. Educate staff on the importance of respecting students' personal issues and not allow them to insert themselves, the staff, thinking they will problem solve everything for everybody. Telling someone they'll be fine and expect them to go about their day because they don't necessarily believe a student's symptoms can cause that student to distance themselves and not trust others. The final one. Phone calls, emails from teachers when students are struggling and when they're successful at something was kind of the ask here. And I just think it's really important for us to not only to see our students, to hear them, but also their families too. I think we all, as parents, get very different insights because when our kids come home, it's been a stress day, they kind of held it all together and they walk in that door and it just goes, you know, and we've all got that, you know, those experiences where kids just absolutely just let it all go. But it's really good for us to hear this as staff. And so we're working on getting that full 50. We're going for 100% of that 50 random selection survey. And so started off with surveys, phone calls, but we're going to meet them in any way we can. So some of it's just been conversation and us writing down the responses. And I'll just kind of share a quick story and then an update from the high school. So last week I had 3 fourth graders who had a little Gatorade water bottle and had squirted the most vulgar, profane, disgusting comments on the blacktop on their way to the bus. And they had gotten out a few minutes early. So they wrote it very, very large. So then when it released, every kid in our school proceeded to walk past that language. We pulled one of the students off the bus to have a brief conversation. We sent her on the way home, and then we regrouped the next day. And so these 3 students were given an opportunity to make things right. We talked with them that when you do something to take away from the school, something as horrible and disgusting and nasty as that for many of those kids, that was their first exposure to language like that. And that there's ways to make it right, to give back and to make things beautiful. So we decided that we're going to do this gardening project. And I called the moms, and for 30 minutes, I had a mother just rail at me about how this was a horrible thing, like her daughter shouldn't be punished and yada, yada, yada. Just like for 30 minutes, just railed on me. And I just tried to reassure, like, it's gardening. It's a hobby. People actually really enjoy this. And I think it's actually gonna be a really positive experience. I think she's gonna have a lot of fun unless you kind of taint the experience. And, you know, after 30 minutes, the conversation was getting nowhere. So I just like, I'm sorry, we're just going in circles. She is gonna do it. And it's gonna be a great experience. And we ended the conversation. Well, would you know, the very next day, I grabbed those 3 students, we come outside, and the moment kids see that we're gardening, I've got a whole flock of kids out there wanting to help and be part of that. It was a lot of fun. We started doing this over the next couple of days. We had weeded this large planter box, started planting it, and we had a dozen kids in every recess, 1st graders, 3rd graders, 4th graders, 5th graders helping out. It was awesome. And the reason why I share that story is because one of the happenings at the high school is they're starting a culture club, which they're taking this idea from Malala that's had a lot of success with this idea of a culture club. But the project they're going to use, the vehicle, is a community garden, which I think is just fabulous. I think gardens heal. I think they help connect people. And in a really cool way, I think it's going to connect our schools with our communities better. So we're just really excited to share. Again, this came out of that equity team meeting. and finding ways that we can be a little more inclusive, a little more accessible to schools. That just really excited this project was happening. So
Where's the community garden gonna be, you know?
they're gonna do it over at the high school. I'm not sure.
Probably
quite
by
where.
the
Well, yeah,
greenhouse there. Yeah, okay. That's awesome.
that's much.
Thank you for remaining strong and making sure that, you know, you had a good plan with the kids. That's brilliant. It was wonderful.
We had to make sure that it was good, like, cause I couldn't have them go home and be like, oh, it was horrible. Like, they went home, it was awesome.
No, I mean, that was exact.
So,
It was nice the way you handled it.
Okay.
Thank you.
thank you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's see.
Sure, they collaborating all that information as they continue through these budget meetings.
Yes, yeah, yeah, they continue to collaborate and share. Part of the strategic plan, the goal is that at the end of the year, they'll assess, okay, what worked, what feedback we got, and then I'll share in a minute what we're gonna do for the plan moving forward.
Let's see here. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and report on goal 3. And if you'll recall that goal 3 has to do with curriculum issues. And so the overarching goal was to looking at preschool through grade 12 curriculum and connecting it to state standards. We're going to select and apply the best instructional strategies and use assessments to measure student progress and adjust instruction. Tony, Bonnie, Cindy, Stephanie, and myself are in charge of this goal. So if you look at the first performance indicator, publish and revised district scope and sequence documents, everything is online. We're just missing a couple of high school documents, but it's all updated now and it's all there. We provided time in the fall
For teachers to revise as they are looking in their new math curriculum or if they offered a new course. So it's all updated and includes the materials used, the topic, what standard it addresses.
what week they're doing that, you know, that kind of thing. Partially done with
Implementation measure 3A, because horizontally we're aligned from one class to the next. English 10, English 10, English 10, but in terms of English 9 to English 10 or English 5 to
English 6 or math, we're not quite there yet in terms of providing teachers with the time and opportunity to talk to each other. And so we have started those conversations with this new intervention effort that we've launched, especially within the math area, giving the 5th and 6th grade teacher time to talk, and then the high school, middle school teacher time to talk about what kids need to have before they go to the next level. And so that will be, that was an aggressive timeline, February 1. Clearly, we'll revisit that and have to continue that part of the goal for next year. I'll skip this middle block here and we'll go to it in just a second. So performance indicator 3B, we talked about identifying 3 instructional strategies and that help all kids use content-specific vocabulary when speaking and writing to achieve grade level standards. So the problem with this seems to be first finding the time to provide in-service and professional development and agreement on what the 3 most powerful instructional strategies are. And then how do you also make it so that it's not a one and done? So if we do this,
professional development on a particular strategy, and then next semester I have new teachers, or next year I have new teachers, but they've missed this. How do we continue to build capacity?
So we're rethinking this a little bit.
So what, currently though, what is the strategy?
So for instance, we've really focused on the ELD strategy where we're getting kids to talk. So they're talking in complete sentences. There's time built into every lesson where kids are talking with the teacher or with each other, because we know for our EL students, that language acquisition has really been the barrier to them exiting out of ELD through the ELPA test. And so we continue to reinforce that, but really that is a component of a much larger category that's identified as student engagement. And so student engagement is a component that we evaluate teachers on. And we've just adopted this new framework, Danielson, and provided preliminary training for our administrators. And we've had a coach come in and teach the administrators how to gauge for these different components. And then we've also had some trainings within each building about what does student engagement look like. And so the thought is maybe we actually target it on student engagement, domain 3 learning experiences, because every class will be different, right? The way your kids are interacting with each other might be very different in one course compared to another one. And so for us to identify just one instructional strategy might have been too limiting, but the idea, if we're focusing on true engagement, what does that look like? And so within our evaluation framework, there are 4 domains, and domain 3 is the learning experience. And so I gave you a small packet, and I wanted to show you, this is part of this
45-page booklet that talks about teacher evaluation system. And when you look at the learning experiences, it talks about everything that's contained in domain 3. You're communicating about the purpose and content. You're using questioning and discussion techniques. You're engaging the kids in learning. You're using assessments, and you're responding with flexibility to student needs. So if a teacher is doing all of that, your kids are talking to each other. They're diving deeper into the curriculum on their own. They're posing questions. They're using different forms of communication, written form or reading to create meaning. And so then if you look at specifically domain 3C, engaging students in learning, what I like is that they have a lot of descriptors in each of these domains. But then if you go to the very back page of this particular document, you look at the top where it says unsatisfactory through distinguished, these are teacher ratings. So if the goal is that I'm a proficient teacher in student engagement, I'm going to look at that language and I'm going to look at what kids are doing. These are the things that kids are doing, not what I'm doing as the teacher. If kids are doing the work, they're going to learn. And so we started to see that maybe just focusing solely on the instructional strategy really is the wrong focus to get kids to buy in to the learning. And so as we continue through this year, looking at the differences between proficient and distinguished, because everybody wants to be distinguished, but we share that distinguished is not a place that you live, you visit. And the idea is that you're hovering or moving between basic and proficient, given the content you're teaching, the new curriculum or whatever, but that it's really focusing on what students are doing and not what you as the teacher are doing. And so especially with the intervention pieces that we've implemented this last 9 weeks of school, and the message to teachers has been, I don't believe you can work any harder. Like you are working very hard, but we have to require that students and their parents are working hard as well. So what does that look like at the kindergarten level? That looks like kids are putting their devices away. There's 20 minutes of reading time together. They're talking about what they read. That looks different at a 5th grade level. So I think that this will end up being a stronger goal or measure as we rework it. Then the third part of that goal was implementing the diagnostic programs. So you've heard us talk about iReady and Alex at the high school level. And then also our new curriculum contains assessment measures that our teachers can use and to identify what standards or skills are our kids achieving well in. And so we can put that to the side, or what are the ones that they are falling a little short in and we need to shore that up. And so the very activity that we're doing K-8 is implementing these strategies to see how well do we do when we look at assessment and adjust instruction, and then we have a post-assessment. And so I think we're fully on track to be able to have a good conversation with this when we go to debrief at the end of the year.
The first piece is that we have an actual assessment calendar that was created. This is a misprint here. It was done this August. Bonnie did this. And it goes all the way until the end of May. And you can see with the coding that the dark green are the recommended windows, the shaded areas are when like you can start. And then she also noted things that were not being, like we were not required to do this year. So like this year is not a year that we do the healthy teen survey. That would be next year. Kindergarten assessment is not available for this, or not required for this school year. So this helps us set targets and expectations for, you must do diagnostic one, you must do the second one and the third one. And there's a level of accountability because we tie it to, okay, this window just closed. You're supposed to be doing, a teacher, something with your colleagues, either at grade level or in content area, that looks at how our kids doing academically. So that work laid the foundation for me to send all of the letters to parents in preparation for parent-teacher conferences that we just had. Heads up, you're gonna get not just the growth report, but also where are they at in relation to grade level. Set us up for doing the intensive intervention remediation for these last 9 weeks. It also sets us up really well for summer school, because this particular grant for summer school, which is slightly different than before, requires a pre and post assessment of learning. And the summer school has to be tied to content area. So we're able to go ahead and apply for the grant, and we're going to get it because we've already done a lot of this pre-work where other districts have not. And so they're not going to be able to meet the deadline, which is, I believe, next Monday for the grant.
So what kind of post assessment do they want? after
Well, we're gonna use our iReady or our ALEKS
that?
software systems. And because then, for those kids that went to summer school, we can then use that data point for when they come back in the fall. You know, because not all kids will go July to mid-August. Some will go the first 3 weeks, or the second 3 weeks, or the entire 6 weeks. And I want every kid to participate for as long as they can. But we decided we're going to use something that we are going to continue to use so that it is meaningful and tied to what we're already doing. Yeah, we want to see, yeah, it's 6 weeks. We're doing a 6-week summer school.
Right.
And we've, the job is posted internally. We told teachers you could job share, you can do one session and not the other, you can do the whole thing. We want to be flexible, but also keep our staff, because it's best for our staff to be here providing the instruction and delivering the guidance. So great, we'll talk about, how exactly what that looks like once we get the grant submitted. And then we've already set our debrief meeting with our team that does the strategic plan for June 17th. And so we'll go through and assess how we've done on all of these goals, and also adjust the performance indicators and measures so that we are prepared to report to you in August. And are there any questions about goal 3?
No,
It's a lot of work.
No, that was awesome.
So goal 4 is the using the long range facility committee data so that we can set ourselves up for the bond. We've already done all of these things. So we've met every performance indicator and implementation measure. And so now we're just in the home stretch to the bond, up to the date of May 21st. And I can share with you that we have had significant outreach in the last week with regard to media outlets. They are specifically curious about the board's stance on closure and consolidation. And so we've been explaining that to people, that the idea is that we're 0 for 9. The voters have spoken, that there's no level of bond project that they're willing to support. And so I also made it clear to anyone that's interviewed myself that, they all want to know how our budget is. Is this happening because we don't have money to operate our school district? And I've made it very clear that this has nothing to do with the general fund. Our yearly operational costs are solid. We're not reducing staff. We are right on budget. We have our contingency
fund fully intact. But this is a reflection of our inability to secure bond dollars to do major upgrades, repairs and renovations, which is different than yearly maintenance.
Yeah.
And so, when we share that every neighboring district around us has some kind of bond and we've not been able to secure one, and now it's becoming to the point where it's, we can't recover from that. And, this is why we're going for the final attempt. People seem to understand. So, you know, we had some news reports out this morning. We've had an article in Statesman Journal, one in the Woodburn Independent. I did an interview today at 4 o'clock. It should be on an 11 o'clock news station, and we have a reporter coming in tomorrow to do an on-site report. I also received a phone call last night from the small schools contact with Oregon Department of Education. This person is in Dr. Williams, who's the director of ODE. She is in Dr. Williams' cabinet, and this person said, I received an email about Jervis possibly closing. What's going on, Andy? And I know this person because I work with her during small school meetings. And so I gave her the rundown about where we're at. And so she is attempting to get either Dr. Williams or another member of the senior cabinet out in the district next week to take a look at our buildings and help advocate for the idea that our school district needs to do everything it can to remain intact and have appropriate facilities for our students to learn in. So the PAC is also going strong. I continue to get updates from them about how the outreach is going and the positive feedback, and it seems to be growing with each week. So if this bond doesn't pass, I don't believe that there is anything else we could have done. We have left no stone unturned. So
I 100% agree,
I agree with that.
which is why my conscience will be okay.
So I will have on the agenda for next week and additional updates about the bond progress at our Tuesday meeting. I will know by then who from Dr. Williams' office is coming to the district. And I can share that. We have, you know, our last few community meetings coming up. So next Monday, we have our parent night here at the high school. Tuesday morning at 7 a.m. We are out at Scenic Valley Farms for a 7 a.m. 1 hour breakfast meeting. And then the following week, one more community meeting and tours of the building again at the end of the month. So
A lot of meetings you've had to.
You've really been
You
working.
you
over
have,
it.
I mean, that's a lot of meetings.
A lot of work being done by a lot of people.
Mhm.
Very appreciative of that.
Okay, so that's all I have on the strategic plan and those updates. So under a discussion item, further closure or further conversation regarding possible closure. So Karen and I continue to work on the financial components of that, what that could look like in terms of using Frontier Charter money to pay our staff to stay. And I don't have any additional information at that time, so I will coming up. And I forgot Mr. Creighton. Because he did his EL report, I was thinking we're done, but he needs to report on goal 1. Which is our social emotional goal. Sorry.
Two things. So one, 6.5% of students in the state of Oregon participate in TAG. I guess the number of English language learners that participate in TAG, 0.4%. There is, as a identification system that is supposed to be intellectually and cognitively based, there's absolutely no way that the difference of 6.1% between those that are never English learners and those strangers, which tells you quite a bit about the biases that are built into the process and how difficult it is to do it correctly. I know
It's really disheartening.
it is.
Mm-hmm.
But on an uplifting note, just before spring break, we got the amount of money that we were, given for summer learning. And just after spring break is when we got all of the grant requirements. And it was pretty significant, and they only gave districts 2 weeks to get it done. So the deadline is next Monday, and if you don't get it submitted by Monday, you don't get your summer school money. Ours was submitted and accepted today.
I was gonna say, I am sure yours was. Yeah, no, we did not wait to the last minute. You were so
Ours was-
good at that.
Ours was submitted and accepted.
Probably like the same day it came out.
I did a lot of work over spring break to make sure that when it did come out, that
That's
we're
awesome.
not going to.
When was our last, like,
Well, we've had summer school, since prior to COVID, but, last summer was very minimal because there was no additional state monies allocated, so we only had migrant summer school. And it was
Correct.
Just a very small, like, what, 60 kids? did
Yeah,
we
60 to
serve?
70 students total.
Whereas before the previous 2
Yeah.
summers, we had served hundreds of
Yes.
students.
Yeah.
So we'll be able to serve hundreds again
Go.
this year.
Yeah.
That'll be so good. Super.
And yeah, and I'll do a full report next Tuesday, but what we're really, really excited about is that we're gonna change our model for summer school this year. And instead of accepting students and putting them in a classroom with one teacher and 15 to 20 kids and doing tier 1 instruction like we would normally do in a regular year, we are gonna staff summer school on a 1-to-5 ratio, and every group of 5 gets a single adult. And they spend 6 weeks with just a group of 5 doing intensive math and intensive reading around writing and speaking. That is all differentiated based off of their iReady end of year scores. So we can take the students that have like skills and like gaps, put them together and say, we're all missing this particular skill. We are gonna work on this skill for 3 weeks in a group of 5.
that's awesome.
That's gonna make.
And
a
there's,
difference.
it's,
Gonna be huge.
yeah.
Yeah.
Of a group of people that know intervention, and I would be the one that knows the least, those people, Cindy, Stephanie, Stacy over at the elementary school, like they are. It's silly to think there are teachers that can't wait for summer school to get here. They are excited for summer. school.
Yeah.
We actually think this model could be fantastic, and I have not heard of another district that's doing something similar to this yet. So, could be pretty cool. But anyway. Cool one. And so, what you have is a draft copy of our deliverable, which is due, the 31st of May, but our intention is to have this done and polished by the end of this month, so we can get a digital copy out to the community, and then we can run print copies and have these available for our mental health fair, which is, I think, May 9th, coming up in about a month from now. And so the idea of this booklet is something that we can provide to not just internally to staff, but externally to parents and community members that genuinely paints the picture of the efforts that we go to in this district to support social, emotional, and behavioral learning. And so page 1 is just kind of where we landed with this document. It's based off our performance goals and our strategic plan. Page 2 is, generally speaking, what is mental health and what they are going to learn about in this booklet. Page 3 is our counseling team. That STAR team, the Students Thrive With Advocate Response. And so all of the members of our district, and again, I think that if you were to look at districts of our ilk, you would be hard pressed to find another district that has the quantity wise, the number of adults that are hired to, that are dedicated to looking at social, emotional, and behavioral health of our community. And then it just kind of talks about all of the different teams that we are involved in, the curriculums that we've adopted, the types of data we collect. And then the following 3 pages, mental health, early learning, and Jervis Elementary School, mental health, Jervis Middle School, mental health, Jervis High School. And so the elementary school talks about things like making attendance a priority, reading together, building math and writing skills, you know, staying informed. If you go to the middle school, now it kind of starts to talk about strategies of talking about mental health with your child, warning signs that you can watch for with your middle school child, how to promote self-care, how to seek support from the school. And then when you go to high school, these are some of the top mental health challenges that our high schoolers face. And so talks a little bit about anxiety and depression and stress and eating disorders and what those are and what they look like and what the warning signs are. Just so we can be very confident that our community and our parents are all grounded in recognizing what these warning signs may look like with their children and what tools they have available to them to either address it themselves or reach out for help if they think that that's appropriate for their family. You flip to the next page. Mental health partnership, school and home. So supporting your child's mental health. Some ideas. Helping your child cope with stress and anxiety. Here are some ideas. Technology and mental health. Here's some ideas. And then here's a QR code that you can scan that will send you to a website that's got a lot more information about technology and mental health and the intersection. And then flip to the next page. It's got the blue and the green text. On the left-hand side, signs of distress. And then on the right-hand side, school response. And so as a parent, you can see student begins isolating themselves from their peers. That's a sign of distress. The school response, encourage re-engagement in different settings, one-to-one check-ins with a trusted adult, explore any major recent changes in school or home life, potential individual or small group support with a counselor. Things like that. And it just all of the different signs of distress that we want to highlight. And then the school responses that we have that come with it. Down at the bottom, when staff recognize a sign of distress, they are encouraged to. And then the list of things that our staff are trained to do or asked to do when they see a sign of distress. And then finally, on the last page, community resources. So descriptions of resources that we either partner with or want to just inform the community about. Love Hate, Marion County Youth and Family Crisis Services, Rainbow Youth, the Trevor Project, Brightways, OYAN, which is a social services group out of Woodburn. The 988lifeline.org website for suicide ideation or concerns of that nature. And then another QR code at the bottom that will bring you to the district mental health webpage with more resources. And so the idea is that we would print this double-sided front and back that would look very similar to what this document is, the strategic plan document. So it looks nice. It's a good document. And then starting May 9th, we will be able to have this available at the mental health fair, send this home in backpacks. We are with the Willamette Health grant that we received for $75,000. I budgeted enough that we can run copies, and we are just going to try to get these out to the community. And again, I think that if you're not telling the narrative, it always gives somebody else the opportunity to do that. And so I want to make sure that as we go into the month of May, we are very proactive about telling the narrative that here in Jervis School District, there's always work to do in everything that we are measuring, but for a district of our size, the effort that Dandy and the administration and the teaching teams apply towards social emotional behavioral health supports for our student body, I think is again, look to other districts of our ilk, and I don't think you would find a like comparison.
Is there an opportunity to have this in Spanish as well?
Yes, yeah,
Right.
yep. So once we do this, I will pass this off to Linguava, most likely.
Okay.
And because it's just a large document. And they are professionals that do very good work with translation. So we'll pass this off to them. They'll translate it into Spanish. They'll translate it into Russian. We'll run copies in both of those as well. We'll have digital copies available. And then we'll be able to get those out to our community members as well.
Great.
Yeah, and then once they have the hard copy or the digital copy in English, if we get a family that comes in that speaks Vietnamese or something else, like it's not that big of an effort for them to turn it around into a different language, and we can give it to them as well.
Yeah, I've worked with Linguava a lot.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, they are,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Sorry, Dr. Hill.
No, absolutely. It's just my social emotional.
Yeah.
I forgot. It's-
Validating all your work here.
No, this is the counseling team. They're doing a great job.
Thank you. So that's all we have for regular meeting. I do need to bring you into an executive session, so
Unless you guys have something else you want to focus yourself on, Anna can call us into executive session.
Is that a regular session and going into executive session? Oh, with the,
Yeah, just read it on the back of the first page.
oh, here we go. The Jervis School District Number 1 School Board, Jervis, Oregon will hold an executive session under ORS 192.6602. D Labor Negotiator Consultation at the District Office Conference Room on Tuesday, April 9th, 2024, immediately following the session.
I'm gonna go ahead and close the room now.
Thank you.
I gotta.
And reduce for